Thank you so much for coming back. The after lunch session in these events can, kind of sometimes be a challenge, but we're not going to have that challenge today because we've got a phenomenal speaker talking about a massive subject who's going to bring tons of energy, I'm sure, and you're going to reflect that energy back at him as well. So please welcome on stage Yemi Olagbaiye from Simwise, who's their Chief AI Strategist.
Thank you. Can we hear me through the thing? Yeah? Cool. Right. Ooh. Let's make AI less binary. So, I'm going to start with a bit of a quote. So, in 1839, there was a painter called Paul de la Roche, and he saw the world's first photograph, and on seeing that, he declared, creativity is dead. No, sorry, painting is dead. Sorry, it says it on the slide. Painting is dead. And the thing is, I don't think he was alone in that fear. I think when we think about technology entering the media space, we all have that fear, and we hear that sort of same funeral march, as it were. But the thing is, if we realistically think about it, since then, painting has evolved alongside many other art forms, alongside photography, into the stuff that we have today. So I guess relating this back to AI, it feels like we're having our own sort of de la Roche moment, if you will, trademarked phrase there. If we look at sort of, the studios, the writers' rooms, the production sort of rooms within media, we've got people either on the one hand really excited about AI, thrilled even, and on the other hand, we've got people that kind of feel that somewhat existential chill that you sometimes get when thinking about AI stuff. You can almost sort of imagine an exec in one of these sort of rooms, and they're kind of marveling at the fact that, you've got this AI that can spit out a storyboard for whatever purpose in the matter of mere minutes. And then on the other hand, you've got someone folding their arms saying, yeah, that's impressive, but, where's that human spark, that sort of human soul side of things? And that's the thing, is that the more and more that I look into AI and that I research into AI, it kind of feels like this is less of a tech debate. It's more of a creative identity crisis, right? I sort of sometimes say it's kind of like a battle of values rather than a battle of code. So over the next 15 minutes, that's kind of what I wanted to explore, to talk about, is that deeper question that I don't think we ask ourselves enough, which is that it's not just about what can AI do, it's about why does it actually matter? Why, on the one hand, you've got these kind of prompt whisperers, and they're whispering these sweet prompts into AI. And like I said, on the other end, you've got these people sort of recoiling in the existential threat of what AI presents to the industry. So for me, the answer lies in this simple phrase. Creativity isn't just what we do, it's who we are, is what I believe. And I think that's why AI in media hits kind of a bit of a raw nerve, if you will. So if we look at a lot of the conversation that we hear today in AI, or at least the conversation that I hear, LinkedIn feed and such, it always feels like it's trapped in those two extremes, right? On the one hand, you've got people saying, yeah, AI is going to replace writers completely. And then on the other hand, you've got people saying, yeah, it's just a tool, right? It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. Personally, I don't think any of these views is helpful. I actually think the most exciting bit, the most exciting frontier, is somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere where humans and machines are kind of co-creating together. So let's take a few examples. 20th Century Fox and their trailer for a film called Morgan. So they used IBM Watson to scan hundreds of horror movies and horror film trailers and kind of sift out what are those emotionally resonant beats, and then put together a bit of a shortlist for the scenes to be used for the trailer. But the key thing is, it wasn't the AI that kind of made that trailer sing, if you will. There was still a human at the end of the process that had to craft that final cut in play. So you've got this process, this idea of the machine is kind of giving the speed to the process, but it's the human that's bringing the actual meaning to it. And another example, this one makes me laugh a little bit actually, but an American artist called Taryn Southern with her beautifully named album, I Am AI. But she used AI to generate melodies, to generate arrangements, but she was the one who sat firmly in the creative driving seat. So she was the one who kind of, chose what the chords were going to be, who wrote the lyrics, shaping the actual emotion of the songs. And, again, here it feels like a story that's not about replacement, but it's a story that's about augmentation, which is what I see this stuff as. And if we look more broadly across the media industry, you've got loads of examples like this, right? So Associated Press, they're using AI to draft and to create these financial reports, these earning reports. And that's allowing the journalists to focus on the stuff that I think the journalists should be focusing on, which is the journalism, which is the storytelling, right? Netflix, I know it's a classic example. We all know Netflix uses AI, but it's still a worthwhile example. Netflix uses AI to select the right thumbnails for programs based on users' preferences. So you're an action fan, well then you get the fight scenes, or you like the sort of the rom-coms and the romantic stuff, so you get the kiss scenes or whatever. And another one that I found in my research, a company called Scriptbook, and they use screenplays to project box office performance. So kind of helping give the writers, the people in that sort of process, unexpected insights that they wouldn't normally be able to find at that same level of scale in terms of processing the data. So the common thread with all of this really is that the AI is there to do the heavy lifting. So the pattern recognition, the sifting through options, the rapid iteration, but it's still the humans who are in the driving seat. The humans are still the ones who are making the final call. And so, like I put on this slide, I think we need to consciously reframe AI, not necessarily just as the creator, but as the brush, or as the lens, or as the bandmate, as I put there. It's a powerful tool, but it still needs a vision. It still needs a human to kind of lead it along the way. Now, we can't be naive about this because, even as I found out myself with trying a few of these things, AI still has its creative limits, and they're not just technical ones. So, great example here, bit of a Marvel geek myself, and Marvel had this series called Secret Invasion. And it's a great example of what they call the uncanny valley of content. So they used AI to generate the opening credits, as you can see here. And, well, as you can see, it just looks a bit off, right? It's too perfect, it's too fluid, it's too, flawless in a kind of way. And when it was released, you had loads and loads of fans, Marvel fans like myself, that when they learned that it was AI made, there was this massive backlash, right? They were calling it soulless, calling it creepy. They were even calling it insulting to artists, which, possibly to a degree it is. Now, Marvel claimed that the reason that they've done this is, for those of you that haven't seen the show, there's this whole sort of plot storyline where you've got these shape-shifting aliens that infiltrate world governments. So the idea was that it was supposed to represent that sort of concept of shifting identities. But the thing is, the audience didn't feel that, right? They kind of, to be honest with you, they lacked that absence, they recognized that absence of human touch in the way that it was created. So it didn't really come through for them. Now, there was a study, I was going to say a recent study that was done, but this stuff feels so fast-moving these days that it's probably old news. But there was a study that was done, and it showed that GPT-4 scored higher than humans, or the average human, in a bunch of creative thinking tests. Now, that sort of sounds impressive, but I think we shouldn't confuse output with intent. So AI is AI, right? It's artificial. It doesn't have life experience. It doesn't have that inner spark. Fundamentally, it doesn't care about the story that it's telling. It's remixing rather than actually expressing. And I think that's the thing with creativity, is that it's not just about surprise or about novelty. It's about lived experience. It's about culture, ethics, emotion, all of these things, right? Not everything that can be counted counts. Now, all of that said, there are some audiences out there that are sort of embracing some of this weird stuff. Another thing I found, this utterly bizarre 24/7 AI parody of Seinfeld that bloody weird. But it did get some it drew in some curiosity. But I think the pendulum is starting to swing the other way, right? I can even see this in my own LinkedIn feed. The more of that AI-generated content that we have flooding the market, flooding our social media, whatever it is, I think the more that we're going to see that growing need for human authenticity in this stuff. I used to be a DJ back in the day, and I sometimes think about it in terms of like the return back to vinyl, right? Like we might see this return to content that specifically says this was human-made content. So I want to, because I've only got a few minutes left, this is flying by, but I want to present 3 potential futures. None of these obviously sort of set in stone, but an interesting way to look at where this might go. The first is full automation. So you might have this streaming service that decides to completely do the switch, right? 90% of content is AI made, news, films, talk shows, whatever. It's all personalized, all endlessly generated. And the pros, well, it's cheap, it's fast, it's personal. But the cons is that it's hollow, right? You're replacing the creators, but also you're numbing the audiences. It's like that what do they call it? Cotton candy content, right? It's kind of sweet, but sort of empty. The second potential future we've got is the other end of the spectrum. So complete, total, rejection, I guess, of AI. AI under watch, as I've put there. So you've got the regulators cracking down. AI has to stay in the background. And all major content has to have that label, like I said, of sort of human content, human created. And I guess on the one hand, fine, the creators feel safe, but I think then now innovation is kind of stalled to a degree. But also, more importantly, I think we miss the opportunity to reach new audiences, to reach new voices, to unlock sort of new forms and such. And fear becomes a bit of a cage in the process. So then you've got this third option, which is the one that I try to advocate when I sort of talk to clients and such, was this hybrid model, this creative symbiosis. So, is what I like to call the Goldilocks zone, to add a bit of an analogy, where it's not too much AI, it's not too little AI, it's just kind of somewhere in the middle. So, you've got a journalist, for example, like I mentioned earlier, who's saying sort of, AI sort of served me all the financial anomalies in this report, and, in seconds it spits it all out for her. And then she can spend her time doing what only humans can do, which is the real storytelling in the process. Or you've got a director who's shaping a film with some sort of AI co-pilot. And, the human, like I said, is the leader. So the human is leading the vision, and the AI is going to throw loads and loads and loads of ideas to the wall. Some of those are going to stick, most of them aren't. But fundamentally, the human's role in the equation is adding that human soul, that human spark, that final sort of human touch. And so this is, I think it's the most optimistic view. It's the most realistic path necessarily. There was a recent study done by Cannes that said 81% of creatives think AI will benefit their work, 71% want regulation. So it's kind of this cautious optimism that it feels like the industry is kind of pitching here. So in other words, like I said, the Goldilocks zone, it's about co-creation, but it's about having some boundaries in there. You're having AI enhancing rather than eclipsing your own creativity in the process. The AI assists, the human drives. So finally, where do we go from here? How do you get to that Goldilocks zone? So to leave you with a few principles that I think can get you started on that journey. Number one, lead with purpose. So AI should be serving the story rather than shaping it. You should always be starting with why does this matter rather than what can AI do, which is a fatal mistake I see so many organizations doing. You want to train your teams. AI literacy is a massive, massive problem, across multiple different industries. So, do things like hosting creative hackathons, letting people sort of play around with some of these tools. The AI whispering, as I call it, it should be a core skill rather than a bit of a niche thing on the fringe of your business. The third, set ethical guardrails. I personally think it's not about us waiting for the regulators. I think we ourselves need to define how and when we use AI. And yes, that comes from some of the creative hackathon stuff, like I was saying, but also it comes from us sort of being transparent, I guess, about how and when we're using it. 4, embrace low-risk experiments. You want to experiment as much as you can. Failing is the way that we're going to learn with this stuff. So, create some sort of sandboxed environments where you can trial this stuff out in a really low-risk environment. Try things, learn fast, all of that stuff. And then 5, you want to leave the human signature in there. I mean, we were literally just talking about this on the side, really. But like, I think that, you know, the audiences don't want that AI-generated content. They want the stuff that has that human touch. So think about what humans resonate with. You know, it might be like a joke that only a human can tell, or some kind of, you know, direction, you know, zigging when you should be zagging, that sort of defies, I guess, the logical process that these algorithms follow. But I mean, we aren't necessarily algorithms. We're human and we make mistakes. So, you know, that's that one. But I think also one final thing is on top of that, I think it's about just having the conversation, which again, we were talking about in the background. I think by having the conversation, by having the debate, like we're having today with conferences like here, I think that's how we can be in the driving seat of shaping how we use AI in a more proactive way rather than a reactive way. So I want to leave all of you on this final thought. It's only my opinion, but you know, take it for what you will. Technology won't steal media's creative soul unless we hand it over. So I talked at the beginning about this idea of sort of AI whisperers and AI skeptics, and I think we need more AI whisperers in the process, but I don't think those people just need to be prompt engineers. I actually think they need to be purpose protectors, protecting the meaning and the why behind we do a bunch of this stuff. So for all of you, go back to your organizations and, you know, go and launch an AI experiment. Go and play around with some tools. Go and start a conversation about like values and what like you as individuals and you and your teams value in your organizations. I think that's how we start to kind of bridge the gap with what we're seeing in AI. And I think that's why we ultimately build a future where it's a tool that's serving us as the talent. We are the talent in the process rather than the other way around. Thank you.